today is to wrap the introduction and move on to the first theory. I mean, I would understand, guys, if you did not start reading. Maybe some of you did read the part on virtue theory. But anyway, don't worry. You'll have time to do that. So I just want to wrap up the introductions by speaking about some concepts that maybe it would be valuable to kind of focus on. These concepts would constitute the ethical domain, or when it comes to making judgments in morality, when it comes to deciding what would be the right thing is, right? It is imperative to be aware of these like four concepts, right? The first concept is the concept of an act, right? Because very often, I mean, it is the case that morality or moral judgments and moral reasoning, more specifically, are concerned with what the right act should be like. Now, acts are of two kinds. Acts are either performed or omitted. And an act is either a performed act, an actually performed act, or it would be an omitted act, an act that is considered, that is thought about, but omitted, deleted, left out. Let me give you an example to illustrate, just maybe to illustrate these concepts. Okay, imagine a person, a young man, is a neighbor to an old lady. They're neighbors. One day, the old lady was coming back home, and when she was like near the block, she was attacked by muggers, by thieves, trying like to rob her, right? And let's suppose that the young man, her neighbor, spotted the event, like witnessed the mugging event. The question now then arises, what would be the right thing for the young man to do? A young man or young woman, for that matter. Just what would be the right thing to do? What would be the right action to do, right? So, for example, if the young man actually jumped on to help the old lady with his own hands, like he did it himself, he would have performed the act of helping the old lady. However, if he thought about helping the old lady with his own hands, but did not, right? He would have omitted the act of helping the old lady, right? I mean, and then I guess you would say, that the young man was not really decent enough to help the old lady, right? That perhaps he didn't even make a call to the authorities, the police, right? Did you guys get the difference between performed or omitted? The same concepts would apply to the example last time. What was the example? Baby Teresa's example, right? If the operation would have been performed on baby Teresa's, then the act of organ donation or the act of helping children in need by organ donation would have been performed. But since the operation was not performed because of the law, right? And this means that the act of organ donation actually was not performed, was not actually performed, was omitted. I think it's straightforward, right? So, another concept that that we should be aware of when it comes to moral situations, moral reasoning, is the concept of a motive or intentions, the reasons. Because, guys, think about it: human beings engage in activity with motives, with with intentions, right? With reasons, right? Uh, Very often, actions, yes, actions are intention based or reason based. Very often, right? So I guess it's important here when it comes to moral reasoning, not only uh, to determine if the act is performed or not, but also it's important to identify the motives, if any, behind the actions. It's important to investigate the intentions, the reasons behind the actions. So let's go back to the young man and the old lady. Um, what if I tell you, suppose I tell you guys, Rinad, that the young man's intentions, uh, okay, let me rephrase. Suppose I tell you guys that the young man, the neighbor of the old lady, ended up actually helping the old lady, right? Ended up performing the act of helping the old lady. But what if I tell you that his intentions were a bit dodgy, right? Dodgy, um, curious. Like, what if I tell you that his intentions were driven by desire by desire of self-interest? What if I tell you that his intentions were intentions of being a show-off, right? That the guy, the young man, jumped in to help out of the old lady because he's a show-off, right? He wanted to show off his skills, his abilities, let's say to his friends and his girlfriend. He just wanted to brag about what he could do. How would you judge the young man then in that case? Would you judge him differently if I would tell you that his intentions were not dodgy, that his intentions were really were intentions were concerned with the old lady herself? Yeah, but Jean-Marc. So I guess I guess I'm giving you two scenarios here. In one scenario, the intentions of the young man are show-off intentions, bragging, like pride, ego. On the other scenario, I tell you that his intentions. Suppose I tell you that his intentions were really intentions that are concerned with the old lady herself. That he really cared about the old lady and he helped her out because he cared for her. Now, wouldn't you judge the two cases differently, guys? But forget the results. I know, but putting aside the results, Anhal, I mean, intuitively, wouldn't you judge it? Wouldn't you judge the case differently? I mean, I don't know about you, but I would, right?
Doctor,
Yeah,
can I answer your question, please?
yeah, sure, Anhal.
Basically, if I want to judge a situation, I judge it by looking at its results,
Yeah,
because the result is what matters, يعني. Despite the intentions of
I
the
know,
man,
I
if
know
the
you.
result ended in a good
I,
place, then
I understand you, and some theories in ethics do take that option. But before we make commitments, I think it's reasonable, Anal, to say that intentions or motives would be relevant, right? in certain in many cases, right? Like this case, perhaps. Or go back to baby Teresa's case. What if I tell you that the parents wanted to get rid of Teresa because she was a burden to them. She was an economic, emotional burden, right? Wouldn't that be different than if I tell you that the parents wanted to sacrifice baby Teresa out of concern for what the organs of baby Teresa could be used for, like in helping out children in need? Isn't there a difference, Anha? Yeah, I mean, maybe be careful, Anha. The result might be the same, but still, when you bring the motives into the picture, moving on to the third concept, the concept of consequences, Anhal's maybe point, because consequences are another word for results. Because, guys, every action we perform, or actually not perform, will have endless number of effects or results, right? By consequences, we mean the probable effects of an action. What the kind of effects, the kind of results that would follow from performing or omitting an action. So really, when we talk about consequences, guys, we talk about consequences as in what may happen in the future, right? What could happen in the future, depending on the actions we perform or not perform, right? So let's go back to the young man and the old lady. Sure, Anhal, so you like, since you like results, tinker with the example to bring consequences to the picture.
Okay, so maybe if the young man jumped in and helped, this might trigger the anger of the burglars or the ones that want to rob the lady, which might lead into a major problem or a more like grave problem, you know? So that's a consequence. Or maybe if the young man jumped and helped the old lady, this might protect her from
So again,
something bad.
thank you. Let's do two scenarios. Like, let's say in the first scenario, the young man did not calculate his actions well, right? He rashly jumped into helping the old lady without calculating or without thinking about it much. And as a result of that, possibly, let's say, the thief or the mugger panicked, freaked out, and ended up shooting and killing the old lady. Right? The second second example or scenario is, well, you could argue that a young man I'm not sure I got your point, Rinad.
Because you said that the first scenario that he might, have bad intentions just to show off. So maybe Aslan he wouldn't help her. He would run away when he sees that
I
he
know, but
has
we're
a
talking
gun.
about something. Yeah, but now we're talking about something. The third point, consequences. So we're forgetting now intentions. So regardless of regardless of the intentions of the young man, he just didn't think it over. He jumped to help the old lady. But as a result, the thief, the mugger, panicked. Maybe he's a first time thief. He panicked. He ended up killing the old lady. So the result was bad, right? On the second scenario, I was saying that, okay, what if the young man actually kind of thought it over and ended up jumping, ended up helping out the old lady without any risks without any risks or damage to the old lady, right? So I guess the point here is that it's important also in moral reasoning to take consequences into results into consideration. Why, Anhal? In order to avoid harmful consequences or bad consequences, because we would like that the consequences of the actions, we would like that the consequences of actions we take or not take, we like these consequences to be beneficial, not harmful. So it's important here that the consequences would be beneficial, not harmful. So I get to go back to the young man. I mean, wouldn't you blame him, Anhal, if he was rash in his action? So although he helped out the old lady, yet he kind of, his action kind of resulted in her death, right? You would blame him in a way, right?
Actually, doctor,
Yeah.
we
Sorry,
see that.
Anhal.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry,
We
go
see
ahead.
this scenario in several movies. For example, if the burglar killed the old lady and ran away, then the police will come and they
Right,
think that the
right.
young man did so. So this will also drag him to another new level, which is the legal.
Yeah, possibly. It's just it's not a beneficial state to be in. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Finally, guys, the last concept that we should be concerned with when it comes to moral reasoning is the concept of character and what kind of person, what we should be addressing the nature of the persons involved in activity, the nature of their character, the nature of their self. What do I mean by nature of the character? What do I mean by the characteristics? Maybe a better word than nature. What do I mean by characteristics of the character? Their personality, the kind of characteristics they have as persons, the kind of traits they have. And traits such as whether they are reliable, trustworthy. Yeah, like give me guys traits of character: reliable, trustworthy,
Curious.
loyal. Sorry, go ahead, say it. Or
Curious.
okay, the negative. Sorry, say.
Curious.
Uh, so I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
I'll just type it. I'll just type it in the chat, doctor.
Yeah. Whether they're self-centered, courageous, curious, absolutely. Right. So these are the kind of characters, whether they're reliable, whether they're strong or weak, all these characteristics. And so I guess it's important to consider the characteristics of the person. Again, let's do two scenarios. What if I tell you that this young man, yeah, but I guess the theory is, John, some theories of ethics would say that, it's important to know about the characteristics of persons, right? Their traits when it comes to making decisions about morality, right, John Mark? I know it would be difficult, but that doesn't mean that it should be done. It should not be done, right? So it's not a question of difficulty, or because it's doable, right? So what if and sometimes really it's not that difficult. You can immediately, Jean-Marc, figure out, right? You can figure out persons, right? Sometimes. Anhal, remind me, I'll distinguish the difference between motives and character in a second. Yes, this is the thing, Patricia. Patricia is asking a good question. There are always risks, but then in morality, we're concerned with doing the right thing, Patricia. If, however, like you say, that morality is all about consequences, right? Then yeah, you should, moral reasoning should be such that moral reasoning should be such that it would be concerned, or it should be concerned with avoidance of risks, with making decisions that avoid risks as much as possible. Of course, because there are always errors. And Patricia, I answer, of course, the issue of risk does not maybe apply to the other things, to the other concepts. It is mainly concerned with consequences. Yeah, the ways, the pros and cons. Patricia, did you get the point? Okay, so I was saying that also, let's say that there are, let me give you two scenarios in regard to character. What if I tell you that the young man, the neighbor of the old lady, has a reputation of being a careless individual, careless, unreliable, not somebody you can depend on, self-centered. I like somebody who wrote self-centered. He has this reputation, right? Then even if he helped out, even if he jumped up to help the old lady, you would look, I guess you would look at his action with suspicion. Yeah. Because you might think, why is that guy doing this way? This is unusual for him. Of course, let me put, people change, right? Maybe you want to wait to see if this guy is going through change, right? Through moral change, right? Of course, the situation would be different if the guy has the reputation of being solid, strong, reliable, right? Trustworthy. I think you got the. Now Anhal asked about the difference between motives and character. Guys, character is much more comprehensive than motives. Motives are just one part of a character, but the personality or the character of a human being is made up or constituted by more than just motives and intentions. Characters, human beings, personalities are constituted of traits, characteristics, which are usually related to habits, um, dispositions, tendencies, right? Yeah. So in that sense, then, Anhal, personality is much more than motives. No, motives, no, Anhal, motives are just one part of the personality. And they're like, motives come and go. They change. They kind of, they're subject to revision because they're dependent on circumstances and time, right? But personality it has to do more with characteristics, traits, habits, dispositions, that you grow over, right? Like you develop over time, yeah. Now, the guys, let me finish this part by saying that the theories of ethics, that the theories of moral reasoning that we will study, that you will guys read, take into consideration these concepts. But some theories place more emphasis or put more value on one of those concepts over others, right? So, for example, utilitarianism, the theory of utilitarianism, puts more value to which concept, Patricia? The concept of consequences over the others, right? As we're gonna see. On the other hand, virtue theory, Aristotle's theory, places more emphasis on the concept of human character rather than the other concepts. So I guess my point that although the theories that we will study more or less take into consideration these concepts, but they put different weights on them depending on the perspective of each theory, right? And our first theory, guys, that we will start covering is virtue theory, Aristotle's theory of virtue. So I'm starting with virtue theory. But before I start, maybe any questions? I'm gonna go slow, maybe because maybe some of you did not maybe yet do the reading. Virtue theory is called also eudaimonia ethics. Eudaimonia, you see the PowerPoint? Guys, you're seeing the PowerPoint, right? Just to make sure it.
Yes, Doctor.
Eudaimonia is another word for well-being or happiness. So virtue theory, in a way, then, is a happiness theory of ethics. It's a well-being theory. It's also a teleological theory. Teleological is a Greek word from telos. Telos means purpose or goal. So my point is that virtue theory is also a teleological theory because it defines good life. It defines virtue, good life, in terms of purpose, supposed purpose that human beings have, supposed goal. And what would be the goal of human beings? What would be the aim or purpose? Happiness. It's a teleological theory because it defines a good life, virtuous life, in terms of happiness. Because happiness is deemed to be the purpose of human beings, the goal of human beings. Okay, let's start by the meaning. Happiness. Okay, let's see. Saying whether happiness is subjective or not. Sorry, subject. But Hussein, what do you think, according to virtue theory? Is happiness subjective? Is the definition of happiness, to be more accurate, Hussein, is the definition of happiness subjective or universal? What do you think, Hussein? I know it's hard to tell from now.
Yes, it is hard actually, but in my own opinion, I think it is subjective because what makes you happy, sir, might not make me happy, and what makes me happy
Right.
might not make you happy. and this applies to a
that's
lot
true.
of people.
But the definition of happiness, is it
No,
the same for
here
all?
I think it's universal in this theory, in this context. I think it's universal.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
absolutely. And you're right. No, it is. Aristotle would believe that happiness, or the definition of happiness, is universal. Why? Because, well, we human beings have the same biology, right? Right? Some of you same biology, right? Mahek, same biology. Same psychology in the sense that we have the same faculties, right? So if we are the same biologically and psychologically, then this must mean that the definition of happiness, that must mean that there is a universal definition of happiness. Now, I should clarify though that although the definition is universal, yet obviously the content, I should say, or the experiences of individuals are subjective. They differ. Individuals don't have the same experience. They don't have the same desires, right? They don't have the same desires. So the desires differ, the experience, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a common definition of happiness that would apply to all of us. Somebody wrote, I think Rinad is close. She wrote, Rinad wrote, definition is universal. I think I explained it, Rinad, right? Maybe, yeah. So moving on, what does the word virtue means? In Greek, the word virtue means to excel. To be virtuous is to excel in one's, to excel in one's function. To excel in what you are good at. So to be virtuous is to excel, to be excellent in what you do, in what you're good at, in your functionality. Sometimes also in Latin, the word virtue also has a kind of the connotation with virility, right? But I think as far as the virtue theory is concerned, we're gonna mainly rely on this definition, arete, or this meaning. Virtue as arete. Arete, Greek word for virtue, it means to excel in one's functions. But guys, what are virtues? Virtues, and how, there you go, are traits or characteristics, such as honesty, loyalty, courage. These are examples of virtues, right? Fairness, justice? What is the opposite of the characteristics of virtues? What do we call it? Word starting with V. Okay, perfect. Vices, guys, are also characteristics, traits. Give me examples of vices. Unjust, coward, arrogant, dishonest, and so on, right? Envious, absolutely. The stress, guys, the stress in virtue theory is on what kind of persons we should be like for us to be good persons, for us to do good things. So virtue theory, there you go, guys, defines the meaning of good life, the meaning of good activity in terms of what kind of persons, what kind of human beings we are. That's what, according to virtue theory, to define the meaning of good life, we should consider the kind of persons we are. We should focus on the human being, the self, right? Because the, it wouldn't be possible to define the meaning of good life without taking into consideration the nature of the human person, the nature of the human being, right? Good and bad are defined by what kind of characters or what kind of persons we are, right? The question then arises, if both virtues and vices are characteristics of human beings, right? Then the philosophical question would arise: how do we distinguish virtues from vices? Why certain characteristics like courage, justice are virtues, but injustice and cowardice are vices? Why some characteristics are virtues, but other characteristics are vices?
It's like
And
virtues are the characteristics you should abide by, while
yeah,
vices are
but
the,
what makes them virtues?
you know, because you succeed, because you excel, like Aristotle just said,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. Excellence, but this needs clarification. Rinat suggesting consequences, but again, it's not consequences as such, because let me remind you, Rinat, as far as this theory is concerned, to define the meaning of virtue, we need to consider the person, the nature of the person, the totality, the characteristics of persons, not the consequences of actions, right? So really, the answer has to do with uh, the characteristic of the human being, and this is what we will explore in detail. Let me just mention one more thing. The virtue theory was first introduced by Greek philosopher by the name of Aristotle, right? Um, Aristotle. So Aristotle was like the founder of this theory. Hala, you might ask me, why are we reading an ancient theory? Because I guess it's still maybe relevant to us even now in some respects, especially that it has been revived recently in literature, in philosophy. So although it was written in ancient times, introduced by ancient Greek, yes, yet its impact, its focus is of relevance even nowadays. Okay, so to answer this question, how we can define virtues, Aristotle introduced a number of questions. And let me go over what is the purpose of life. And I think you know, according to Aristotle. And I think you know the answer by now. Happiness is the purpose of life. Another question is, well, what is the true function of a human being? Do human beings have functions? Biological, psychological functions? And if they do, what is their essential function? And as it turns out, the essential function of a human being That is what is essential, is rationality or reason. Okay, so keep these questions in mind. Keep these points in mind because we're gonna get back to them later. But in the meantime, let's proceed with the discussion. Aristotle made a distinction between two kinds of goods. There are two kinds of goods. Why I'm saying that? Because according to Aristotle, every activity we engage in it for a certain part, for a certain purpose, which we consider good. Because this is who we are, human beings. We engage in activities for a purpose, for a goal which we consider good, right? So we play a football game because we wanna win, right? The game. We consider winning the game to be good, right? We engage in business because, sure, why do we engage in business? Because we want to make wealth. Wealth is good, yeah? We study medicine because we want to cure, to heal, right? Help to cure, to heal, and curing and healing are good, right? So every activity we engage in, every activity, we engage in it for a certain good, for a certain purpose, which is good. However, there are two kinds of goods according to Aristotle. What he calls a final good, and the second one is, I'm going to finish with this, guys, instrumental good. Let's start with the instrumental good. An instrumental good is a good that we seek not for its own sake, but as an instrument to attain another good. Let me repeat, an instrumental good is a good that we don't seek for its own sake, but we seek it as a way, as a mean by which we attain something else we want, we will consider as good, right? Final good, however, is a good which we seek for its own sake. We don't seek it as a way to attain something else. Rather, we seek it for its own sake, simply because there's nothing else beyond it to seek, right? That's why it's the final good. Did you guys get the difference between the two definitions? Okay. Type in this case, money is what?
Instrumental good.
Instrumental, yeah, absolutely.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah.
So we use instrumental good in order to attain our final good. I know that's how it is.
Not only you follow. And for example, you want money because you buy a car. You get a car because it takes you places. So these are all goods. They're all instrumental goods. But the chain of goods, I'm glad you're on, must stop with a final good. And what is the final good? And what is the final good that we seek for its own sake? Yes, I'm glad you got happiness. Happiness is the final good that we seek for its own sake. And Aristotle's point, all the human beings are of the same nature, that according to Aristotle, the final good of all the human beings, given the nature of it, is happiness. I think I want to stop here today, guys. We did lots of stuff, especially. Yes, he is optimistic, but still, why do you say he's optimistic, Rinat?
Like, I mean, life doesn't always end with happiness.
Yeah, of course not. Absolutely, not everyone would agree with that. Absolutely. So Freud, for example, Freud would say, well, that it's pretty much impossible for human beings to achieve happiness. Of course, Nietzsche would reject this idea of happiness being the final good of mankind. So not all philosophers and psychologists would necessarily agree. Obviously, Thomas Hobbes as well. Yeah, not everyone, but Aristotle, comes from this tradition, which regards happiness to be the final purpose in life. Whether he's right or not, that's something to consider. That, guys, I think it's enough for today. You promised me, guys, you read the part on virtue for next time. Any question? Let me start the poll. Please, attendance, guys, write your attendance in the poll that I just started. Okay. Can you see it, guys? Can you see? Okay, I think you can see it. All right, bye, guys. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you next Tuesday. All right, bye, guys.
Doctor?
Yes.
We should read them from the
The
side.
PowerPoint isn't posted on Blackboard, right? Or بس عندي مش مبينة.
The PowerPoint number I will post today or tomorrow. Okay.
Okay,
No
thank
problem.
you.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
doctor.
doctor.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.